working as a network planning engineer, and work with Toshome for ADIX when they are forming the ADIX initiative. We're there. I would like to thank us, Toshome and Dawit, their first work regarding ADIX. So we're already there at ADIX, we're connected. So regarding to the ADIX, one of the main advantage, there is a panelist mention about the banking. So one example I can mention is we have mobile application, payment application, M-Pesa, and there is a Bank of Abyssinia that's already connected, and they have their own mobile payment application called, I forget the name of the mobile application they have, so Apollo, yeah? So sooner or later, via ADIX, we can connect the two mobile applications and we'll have the seamless interconnection without going abroad. So let me jump to my question. Regarding supporting this ADIX, especially this is a small, I mean, when I say small, it's a child local IXP. What is the Internet Society supporting the ADIX initiative? What are those supporting things? Because it needs a support from this community in terms of different perspectives, in terms of building the society, building the policies, everything. So what are the Internet Society up to that, supporting the ADIX community? I would like to thank you again.
Thank you very much. Yes, Toshome, you want to ask a question? Okay, some comments? Okay, hold on, probably let's take all the questions and then we can address all the questions at once. All right. No other question? Okay. So probably we can start by Toshome, yes? Yes, you can walk on to the microphone.
Dylan, can you hear me?
Hold on a second, there is another question coming.
No. It's just a request because we were not able to hear the first gentleman who asked questions. So I hear my name. I know that Kevin also heard his name. So if the gentleman can please come back and ask again those questions now that the mic is better. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Probably after Toshome, he can come back and ask a question.
Okay. My name is Toshome. I work in Wingo Africa, and of course, I'm a coordinator of the ADIX Internet Exchange. So my question is one for Kevin, maybe from Afrinic, and one kind of input for the second presenter. So as ADIX, I'm privileged to get IP address and ASN, and we're the member of that. And thank you for that, Afrinic. They have facilitated for that, and it was good. And particularly, they have supported us an internet exchange. But one of the question, or maybe kind of comment, is we were trying to encourage some of the connected members who have not resource like ASN and IP. So we managed to support about two members. But the comment I saw from the requirement they have is one of the stringent requirement is just a company, anyone who want to get this resource like IP and ASN, there should be a kind of testimonial from at least 3 ISPs. That is okay. But as a country like Ethiopia, we don't have as such some big ISPs. Of course, right now we are almost 3 close. But previously it was a challenge. And this is a kind of, might be asked for other countries who have many ISPs, but a country who having the small ISPs, and it's difficult to facilitate this requirement as a country like Ethiopia. So I don't know in what way they can manage and they can support enterprises in Ethiopia who can be member of the Internet Exchange, as the Internet Exchange requires two important resources, ASN and IP. So this is one. And even I would like to ask if there is any support, when we're just filling some of the forms, there are back and forth issues. And some of the individuals, they may support you very well, but there are some delays to respond in timing activities. So I don't know in what way, because we're trying to push enterprises, banks to have their own resource, but this will be a challenge. And I don't know if there is any even a kind of short training, so we can arrange some potential connected members, so as they can give us kind of small training in the way that everyone can comfortably fill the forms that is requiring from Afrinic. So the second speaker from ISOC is, I think there is a kind of data he was saying there's no IXC in Ethiopia, but we are here as addicts that we have been registered a year before, so I don't think that the data that he has is not well updated. So this is one comment. And the other comment is he was saying that the only data centers in Ethiopia, and he was saying Safaricom, Ethio Telecom, and Raxio. But as Wingu, we are the first data center who received the Tier 3 certificate from the Uptime Institute. That is on 2023. So even the reverse is true. I'm not saying Raxio has already secured the Tier 3 data center lately, but we are the first. So I think the data that he received, I don't know where it is, but we are saying that the first Tier 3 data center in Ethiopia. So this has to be corrected. Thank you.
Thank you, Teshome. The first gentleman, you can probably repeat your question briefly.
Okay, let me repeat my question. Hopefully I'm audible this time. I wanted to first start by saying thank you for the excellent presentations from both of you, from the panel, and for the opportunity to address you. My first question was to Chege around how do we support African governments to peer their traffic and to route their traffic efficiently. This expertise is missing, and governments end up paying a lot of money to transit providers to route their local traffic. This is even common even in Kenya, where we are considered to be a bit more advanced in this space, but it's still happening, where government-to-government traffic and government-to-consumer traffic is sometimes even routed internationally, leading to extreme costs that are unnecessary and to also degraded services. So that's my question to Chege. My second question is to Cedric. Again, from everyone, from the gentleman that just spoke before me, it's encouraging to see African IXPs coming online, especially the new one in Ethiopia and the one in Djibouti. And I think Wingu and WebSprix need to be uploaded for this. Afrinic being a key pillar of the internet in Africa, has done a great job, shown by the presentation that Cedric mentioned. However, there have been some challenges with regards to governance, policy, and some legal issues that have affected Afrinic, and these have made their way into the media. As members of this ecosystem, we are understandably concerned. And my question then is, how are you addressing these to ensure that the new IXPs that are now coming online can continue to receive the necessary support from Afrinic, bearing in mind your role in allocation and management of IP address blocks and ASNs? Thanks.
Thank you. Cedric or Kevin, do you want to start?
Yeah, I can start. Yes, so thank you for the questions. Maybe a couple of clarifications on my end. So the data that I was displaying there on the IXPs, that is, can you hear me? Yes. Okay, so the data that you will see on the Pulse dashboard, if you go now, and you see the data that I was showing there for IXPs and comparing, Ethiopia to various countries. As I'll say, as of the time of that data being presented, that was the data that was available from the sources we have. So we do renew or update the data periodically. So some of the data there may not be very current. I'm very aware there's of ADIX operating, but I just want to display that or clarify that when you go to the past dashboard and you compare the different countries, that data there is as of the time we collected that data and process. So it's not real time data. It's not data that is updated every day. We are looking at ways to update it more frequently. So please note that when you look at the data, the dashboard, not all of it is current. We're trying to, make the updates as frequent as possible. So just note that when you look at that data. So yes, there is currently IXP developments and setup in Addis and in Ethiopia, but some of the data we have there has not reflected that. So just clarifying on that. Then secondly, also, I think similar comment on the DCs. I did mention all the DCs. All I was showing was the growth in terms of the development of the data centers being set up. I do know the others. I just mentioned the ones that I was familiar with at the time. But that not, when you go to the past dashboard, it doesn't list and say these are the data centers that are known there. So the data will just show a figure or a percentage score, but it doesn't show the details of, this, these are the data centers that are present and so on. And also, as I mentioned, there is a bit of time for that data to reflect and update. So please note that when you go to the past dashboard. Then the second question, the audio dropped a bit in terms of, I didn't get the question in terms of government to government service. That's the only part I had of that. Maybe Gilan, you can.
Yes. The question was that capacity building opportunities for government to improve their peering because some traffic goes out of the country, still goes out of the country. What needs to be done from a capacity building perspective? Are there trainings and so on and so forth?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So in terms of capacity building and skills development, that is something that is very much needed. And there have been interventions made by various organizations, including Internet Society. We did run what was a peering training roadshow or a routing training roadshow, whereby we would get the engineers who are the various government agencies or IXPs or network operators, get them to a room just like that one and train them. There are organizations that still do that. There are also locally based organizations that can do that. There used to be, in some countries, that is a role that is played by the network operator group, or NOGs, or NOGs in short, whereby engineers from various parts of or various players in the ecosystem of ISPs and so on are brought into a room like that. They are trained on routing, they're trained on pairing, they're trained on BGP. This is something that can be done in. Actually, I've been to Addis myself a few years back to run a training. That was on network design and I believe DNS. So some of those interventions can be done. ISOC can help if that demand is there, that need is there. And there are also other organizations, even Afrinic does do a bit of training on IPv6 as well. So I think if that is something that would be needed, definitely let us know, speak to Gilande and Dr. Bekele, and we can see how we can assist with that. I think those are the questions, Anthony.
Yes, thank you very much. I want to echo what you mentioned about NOGs. So the capacity building for governments, they can also take advantage of the local NOGs. So what is required, and we have had this discussion already with, I think, Enoch and Dr. Asrat, is to see how to have a local NOG, an Ethiopian NOG for capacity building, continuous training. And it does not really focus on government or non-government. It focuses on whoever is available, needs any capacity building. I think we can only support that. We also have a grant focusing specifically for that. It's called STC funding grant. It's, I think, up to $4,000 for organizing a capacity building. And also Internet Society can facilitate, can send a facilitator to come and do the long training. Peering roadshows are one-day event. Best practices are 2 days events. Technical workshops are 5 days events. So depending on the maturity of the market, then we can come and then support. We've had the pairing event. Most probably the next one to come will be a best practice or a technical if the needs arise and there is a request. Yes, David?
Thank you. I wanted to follow up on what Kevin said about the discrepancy of our data. This is something that has been mentioned by other countries as well. I remember Senegal in one of the meetings were complaining that the number of data centers was not correct. This is very often because you don't provide the information. The same way, it's important to provide information on peering DB to be visible. I don't remember exactly which source that we use for the data centers, but you have to provide that information yourself. And this is true for many things. For example, the other day, Steve Song was complaining about, backbones, terrestrial backbones. We don't know much about terrestrial fiber networks because the operators do not provide those information. So it is important that you use those databases. They cannot get information from anywhere but from you. So I think it's a cultural thing. We have to provide that information. It's not, a big secret. Everybody knows that Wingo is there, so it's not secret. In fact, it is an advantage for you to provide information about you so that, clients can know that you're there. Thank you.
Yeah, and maybe just to add on that before Cedric jumps in. Thanks, Dad, for that information. As I mentioned at the beginning, we don't host the data. We don't process the data in terms of doing the research. We aggregate data from other sources. So it's very important that you make sure if you're operating the IXP or you're operating an ISP, please make sure your data is up to date on PeeringDB, because actually for IXP data we fetch the data from PeeringDB and then present it. So it's very important that if you're operating a network, you're operating IXP, please make sure information is up to date. And then when you do that, also if you go to the PASS dashboard, there is a page there that we call the IXP tracker. And when you click on that, it will show you the number of operational IXPs in the country, and it even shows you who is peering in that IXP. And that is data all from PeeringDB. We don't do the research to collect that data. We rely fully on PeeringDB, and PeeringDB relies on the operators of those infrastructures to go in there and put that update. So I just want to reiterate that we don't host the data. So if you go there and if you go to the PASS dashboard and you see some data missing, please make sure that you've updated your network information on the public repositories like PeeringDB. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Just to add on that, so probably from an exchange point perspective, there is the IXP manager, and there are more plugins that are coming up that allows an exchange point really to populate the information that they have on the exchange to PeeringDB automatically. You can also explore that. IXP manager does that. It can push information to PeeringDB, and it can also help you draw or define or configure route server configuration automatically from PeeringDB's information. So it's very important to look at that automation opportunity so that you can put that in place. And I think the rest, David and Kevin have mentioned that. I think Cedric is next. Cedric, you have two questions, I think. One on the IXP resources for government and for members. And there is also a question about the governance issues and how the resources will be given. And there was also another question from Teshome where he said the requirements for them to get resources. Probably you can clarify more on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for those questions. Before addressing my question, just a comment on the last question that was addressed by Kevin regarding training opportunity for government. As Kevin mentioned, and also you yourself, there are so many opportunities for government. One of the main challenge that we have is government availability. Most of the time, we are reaching out all those organizations that are working toward internet development, Internet Society, Afrinic, and you can name them, even the NOGs. We are reaching out to government, offering training for free, telling them that we are ready to come, do the training, you don't have anything to pay. But most of the time, they are not available. It's either they are not available or it doesn't align with their political agenda. So I would say, if you have the possibility, please talk to your government and government agency. Encourage them to go for those trainings, because we have on the continent multiple organizations that are ready to support. So please also advocate and encourage them to do that. Now, for the questions that have been asked, I will start by I would say the first one, because that was regarding governance. Yes, currently we have governance challenges at Afrinic. As I mentioned in my presentation, we currently have the official receiver that is back. And as much as possible, we are trying to keep operation running. And also, it's a challenge for us because some of the current situation is not something that staff we can tackle, because this is at the court level. So it is actually between I would say the Supreme Court. It's at the level of the Supreme Court of Justice of Mauritius. So it's between Afrinic, the organization, so the Afrinic Limited organization registered in Mauritius, and the requester, and yes, and the requester. So this is something at a higher level that us as staff we can really address. But what we are doing as staff is to make sure that operations are still on, that all the critical services are running, and that we provide all the services that we can. And when it comes to IXPs, we have a team that is working on that, and myself, I'm the point of contact when it comes to IXPs, and part of my daily job is to make sure that support to IXPs from Afrinic is actually provided. So you feel free to reach out to our team, engagement@afrinic.net, and we will be more than happy to support any Internet Exchange Point initiative or technical community initiative, despite the challenges that we are facing. So yes, we are limited because right now we don't have access, for instance, to our budget. So the budget that we usually had to fund some of the activities toward the IXPs are not available, but nevertheless, we are still there, and we still have our expertise, we still have resources, so we'll do as much as possible. So please don't hesitate. Now, to come to the questions from Teshome, the first one was regarding the requirement so there is that requirement about having 3 ISPs. Actually, it's not really 3 ISPs, but it's 3 network operators. So it doesn't have to be ISPs, Internet Service Providers. It can be network operators. So any entity that is running a network and have internet number resources is actually eligible to be part of that list. Now, again, part of my job is to make sure that IXPs are being built, and that they are they can be developed themselves, and they are up and running. So reach out if you have any challenges. It can be either the number of network operators or anything. You can reach out. And just to give you an example, sometimes in countries you have the NRENs, so the Research and Education Network. So those are the people that you can reach out to. You sometimes have universities that have received IP address long time ago. So those are the people that you can reach out to. And the only thing is that a letter from them saying that they are ready to join the IXP once it will be available. And now the last point regarding the support in filing, the challenges in filing for new resources. Yes, sometimes it's not really easy, and it can be very challenging because the way things are sometimes presented and formulated from Afrinic perspective, or from, let's say, internet number resources policy perspective, can be a bit different from what you have, let's say, in networking classes or networking course. So instead of having course or training, we have actually better than that. We have a team that is there to provide support. So if a member wants to navigate all this, and actually for you to avoid having all those back and forth, you can just reach out to us. You have the stakeholder development team, so engagement again at afrinic.net. Reach out to us, and we will take time, to go with you, discuss with you, and make sure that you understand the whole process before you start. So like that, once you start the process, you already have all the element at end, and you have everything that you need for you to be able to go as smoothly as possible. And it is not like a one time. We'll just continuously provide support for if you need to for support in decrypting the jargon from our colleagues from member services. So please feel free to reach out. So I think that's it for me, and thank you very much again for your questions. Back to you, Gilam.
Thank you, Cedric. I think, Dawit, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, sorry, maybe you wanted to end the session, but I think it's important first to say a little bit more about Afrinic's situation. Maybe Cedric can't say much about it because as a staff, he has some limitations. So some of you might know, but many might not know, but Afrinic does not have a CEO nor a board for more than 2 years, which means it is on autopilot. And in fact, if it is still functioning, it is thanks to great staff members like Cedric, who are to be recognized for the great work that they are doing. So thank you very much for everything that you're doing and really keeping Africa's internet alive in spite of your situation. So a big applause for Afrinic. Second, there is an election that is mandated by the court, led by the court, that will happen in June. It might be postponed, but right now it's what's scheduled. And members of Afrinic will vote. And those of you, I don't know how many we have here. How many Afrinic members do we have? Cedric, are you there?
Cedric, do you know how many members you have in Ethiopia?
Yes, we have 8 members in Ethiopia.
8 members. And some maybe from the region are also listening. So it's important that you use this vote to make sure that Afrinic goes in the right direction, because it might not. There are lots of contentions, and it is possible that in 6 months we don't have Afrinic, and this is serious. As you have heard, numbers are critical, and by using your vote appropriately, you can ensure that Afrinic survives. So if you are not informed, because I've talked to some of you and you don't know what's happening, you have to be, to know. It's just a few votes, but that can change the balance. So please, if you don't know about what's happening, please talk to those who know. We know, so you can come and talk to us, and make sure that you use your votes appropriately. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dawit, for that. There was one last question, and then probably we can call it a day, from the gentleman from Safaricom. He said, he talked about payments, Safaricom, M-Pesa, and I think there is another payment system here also. And he was probably, if I'm not mistaken, talking about making sure that those payments remains within those two countries without going outside of the region or the countries. So yes, networks need to be established, and I think since Safaricom is in Kenya and is also in Ethiopia, those payments should, I think they should not go outside of the country. The problem would come probably if it is from a system here in Ethiopia to another system in Ethiopia, which is not, which both are not in the same network. Then that probably will go outside of the country. Then yes, it's important to look at the traffic and then probably advise the best way to do that. In some discussions in the past, some people started discussing and saying, oh, we need to interconnect the exchange point, but that is not one of the best practice, but we can probably have a separate discussion about that and probably more focus on how can we keep the local traffic local without also doing some things that can endanger the whole ecosystem. Your second question was about the support to ADIX. So again, as far as Internet Society is concerned, we have two funding programs available, open. One will open on the 20th of this month. Another one is already open for the technical community or the community support, which is also available. Those are available for addicts to take advantage of and then build the community through workshops, events like these ones, or longer workshops 1 week. So that is available. Through that same financing, addicts also can procure hardware, can procure systems, servers, routers, switches. So this is also available for addicts to take advantage of. And probably even later, when the market matures, even for the other exchange you mentioned, I think someone mentioned an exchange in the south, an exchange in the north, the funding will still be available for support, and Internet Society will be more than happy to help. So on that, I want to, can we give a round of applause to our speakers, Kevin, Chege, and Cedric from Afrinic, a very loud round of applause.